Welcome back, Defenders. Today we're going to start with my favorite story. And last week, President Putin gave an address to his people that lasted about 8 or 9 minutes. And somebody noticed in this video that Putin never moved his hands once. This is the video, and it's been sped up by about 4 or 5 times. And sure enough, all you have to do is look at his hands. And Putin's hands in this video never move once. That's not natural, that's not normal for a 70-year-old man who in the past frequently likes to fidget with his hands. So people are speculating that this was an AI-generated Putin that gave this address to the Russian people. People are focusing on his tie, and it doesn't seem natural overlapping his hand. People are focusing on this corner of the chair that just kind of moves randomly. And I'm not saying that Putin is dead, I'm not saying Putin is dying, but it is entirely possible that after 24 years, Putin doesn't want to do this anymore, giving these perfunctory addresses to the Russian people. So he might have told his underlings at the Kremlin, just take my past speeches, just take video from speeches I've given in the past, plug it into the computer, I'll approve the script, and then you can spit out an address to the nation that's entirely AI generated. This conspiracy is not crazy because just 3 weeks ago, Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT News, admitted they're doing this with commentators for RT News. This was insane that she admitted this, but here she is on Kremlin State TV bragging that they're no longer using real people in their news reports. For us, in many of our industries, artificial intelligence significantly reduces the cost. For example, if you read RT, you can see a description, AI generated. For example, we got rid of photo editors. AI is doing all of it. It selects illustrations or generates them if they do not exist. It's great. It saves us a lot of money. A significant part of our TV hosts do not exist. They don't exist. They are completely artificial. This person doesn't exist and never existed. This face does not exist. We generated it. We've come up with its voice, with its character. They have their own social media accounts. This is the head of RT News saying that their broadcasters, their correspondents, are AI generated. They're fake people with fake voices, with fake social media accounts reporting the news. Why would Russia do this? And it's because you can't trust humans. Russia has killed hundreds of thousands of people the last 3 years. And some human beings might develop a conscience. If they're on live television, they might try and get the truth out to the Russian people. So the Kremlin believes they can no longer trust human beings to report their propaganda. So they admit they're AI generating their own correspondents to deliver the propaganda. And if you don't believe me, let me show you what passes for news on Kremlin State TV.
Тревожные сообщения снова приходят из приграничных населенных пунктов региона. Сегодня под обстрелом оказалась окраина Борисовского села городок Вологодское село Новопетровка сегодня тоже попало под огонь ВСУ. Есть разрушения, к счастью, обошлось без пострадавших. Но самая тяжелая ситуация в Шегеке. Ночью по городу был нанесен массированный удар. 37 снарядов упали в центре, 4 ранены. Повреждены жилые дома, торговые, административные объекты, автомобили.
You can go ahead and change the channel in Russia. It's not going to actually change anything. This is a nightmare dystopian society in which the Kremlin is using AI-generated newscasters to force their propaganda on the world. Okay, let's follow up on the top story from the last 3 days, and this is the approval of Western governments for short-range missile use inside of Russia. ATACMS and even Storm Shadow are short-range missiles, not long-range missiles. And the first target that was chosen by the Ukrainians with a Storm Shadow was actually within 40 kilometers. They didn't even use the longer range to hit a target deeper inside of Russia. And Ukraine chose to go after this compound. This was some kind of sanatorium with an underground network. And they needed the bunker-busting capability of the Storm Shadow for a decapitation strike. They were trying to kill Russian and North Korean generals who were using this sanatorium as a command post. How effective was it? And I don't think anyone actually knows. The destruction took place underground. North Korean general wounded in Ukrainian missile strike, according to the Wall Street Journal. Storm Shadow strike kills a Russian general, sources claim. Storm Shadow strike reportedly kills 500 North Korean soldiers and 18 Russian officers in this underground command post. Maybe, maybe not. I don't think anyone actually knows, perhaps even the Russians at this point. So the UK gave permission publicly, I think weeks or months ago, that it was okay to use Storm Shadows. But this is the official declaration from France. France allows Ukraine to strike Russia, no red lines, in their own defense. If Russia's unhappy, if Russia doesn't like this, they can stop the war. Russia is the one attacking. They're the ones on the offense everywhere. If Russia actually wants to stop this war, all they have to do is stop attacking Ukraine. And the permission given is already having an impact on saving civilian lives. Permission to strike deeper into Russia has already reduced guided bomb attacks in Ukraine by 30 to 40%. Russia has been using their airfields within Storm Shadow and ATACMS range to launch these daily missions to fire off these Fab 500 guided bombs, targeting apartment buildings, targeting civilian areas. And they don't feel comfortable doing this anymore. They have to pull their planes out of ATACMS range to keep them safe. If they're farther away, they can no longer run multiple missions in a day. The flight time is farther. This also burns more fuel, it takes more manpower, it's more wear and tear on the airframes of these jets. So yes, it's reducing the frequency and reducing the capabilities of Russia's airstrikes on civilian targets. That's why Western permission was given. If Russia's unhappy, if they don't want their military bases inside of Russia going boom, then they can stop this war at any time. Russia's official response was launching this ICBM or IRBM. Russia's Orshnik missile likely had no explosives and didn't cause much damage. This is according to analysts. So technically, this missile has a range of 5,800 kilometers. To be designated an ICBM, you have to be greater than 5,500. But primarily, this is a shorter range, intermediate range ballistic missile, an IRBM. It still goes farther enough to destroy Western capitals. That is the point the Russians were trying to make when they launched this IRBM on the city of Dnipro. Here is how Kremlin State TV covered the event. They finally did reveal to their people that, yes, they launched this missile on the city of Dnipro. This is how Olga covered it on Kremlin State TV. Bloomberg reports that the state-of-the-art hypersonic missile can be equipped with a nuclear warhead. The British Mirror says that the Orshnik launch was a World War III warning shot. The New York Times and Associated Press are calling the Orshnik strike a signal from Russia not to Ukraine, but to the West. The BBC says that it's impossible to assess the real power of the Orshnik. Sky News military experts confirm that no existing Western air defense systems are able to shoot down Orshnik. More put simply, the new Russian hypersonic missile is an untouchable weapon. The Guardian believes that Putin is directly threatening London and Washington over their lifting of restrictions on long-range ATACMS and Storm Shadows. That's to say, they understood us correctly. There you go, that's the headline. For months, people have been saying if the West allows the use of ATACMS and Storm Shadows on the territory of Russia, nuclear war, World War III. And what do the Russians do? They launched an IRBM to no benefit, to no impact. They're now just declaring themselves the victor. Washington has understood Putin's warning after hypersonic missile strike, according to the Kremlin. There's nothing new here. Russia has already been launching cruise and ballistic missiles that are nuclear capable, Iskanders and Kinzhal. So launching one more that goes slightly farther changes nothing. And this has been the story for the last 3 years. The Russians using their nuclear arsenal to blackmail the West. Don't send HIMARS. Don't send Storm Shadows. Don't send Patriot air defense systems. Don't send Leopards or Abrams. Don't send ATACMS. Don't allow artillery and Gimler's use on the territory of Russia. We had that fight 5 months ago. Don't send F-16s. Don't allow the use of ATACMS or Storm Shadows deeper into Russia, or we will nuke you. The reason why Russia has not nuked anyone is there is no benefits. Just think it through. Russia uses a nuclear weapon somewhere, some way. Will the benefits outweigh the costs? And there is no benefits. There is zero net benefit. Putin actually is a rational actor, and for 3 years, he's never used a nuclear weapon because that would be the end of him. That would be the end of the Russian state if NATO actually joined this war. And that's NATO's red line, if Russia uses a nuclear weapon, which is why they'll never do it. The Russians are cowards. So you might be thinking, you might be asking, what's the next red line? And I do believe that President Biden in the next month is going to approve and deliver JASSMs. JASSM is the American equivalent of a Storm Shadow or a Scalp. This can be launched from F-16s. There might be an adapter they've built in order to fire it from old Soviet jets, but it's coming. It's coming in the next month. These headlines about Russia nuking the world and World War III are not going to go away in the next 60 days. And here's the statement from the White House. The White House sees no indication of Russia preparing to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The United States government has had all the intelligence the last 3 years. They were screaming prior to the full-scale invasion, Putin's going to do it. The United States government even knew about the Crocus City Hall attack in Moscow. The State Department and the US government, before anything happens in the Kremlin, if it's important, they warn the world. And right now there are no indications that the Russians are seriously considering using a nuclear weapon. They're going to talk the big talk on Kremlin State TV to scare weak-minded people, but they're not going to actually do it. And here's the reaction from the people most at risk, most at danger of being hit with a nuclear weapon. This is member of Ukraine's parliament, Alexei Goncharenko. Here's his update from yesterday.
I'm near the parliament of Ukraine. Right now it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I should be here for parliamentary meeting. Fortunately, it's cancelled today, but I want to tell to everybody, we are not afraid here of Putin, of his missiles, of his Oreshnik, and all this blah, 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 and his bluffing. We are not afraid. We stand tall, and that is our address to the whole world. It's nothing to be afraid of. He is just a guy who tries to threaten the world with his, I don't know, speaking about his nukes and everything else, his red lines. The only lines he has are really brown lines. That's all lines he has. So don't be afraid. Be courageous like Ukrainians, and we all will win.
The people of Ukraine are not scared. The people of Ukraine are the most likely to get nuked by the Russians, and they're choosing not to be intimidated. They refuse to surrender. They refuse to give in to Russia's nuclear blackmail demands. And they're begging the world, they're asking the Western world, have some courage. Just have some courage, and Ukraine can win this war. So who lacks courage? Who believes Russian propaganda and their nuclear threats? And this is unfortunate. American podcast host Joe Rogan lashes out at Biden and Ukraine leadership. In a expletive-laden comments, the podcaster said Ukraine's use of American-made missiles on military targets in Russia will lead the world to World War III. This clip is very sad to watch. It's 3.5 minutes. I'll link it down below. Joe Rogan says, F Zelensky, F the people of Ukraine. Just let Russia win. I don't want to get nuked. And, in his house in Texas or whatever. And Joe Rogan's a great guy. I've watched lots of his podcasts with very entertaining guests. But he's been co-opted. And he's been influenced by guests he's had on, like Alex Jones, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, all people who repeat Kremlin propaganda and more or less are working for the Russians. Tim Pool's been on his show, and that guy was getting paid $100,000 a week by the Kremlin to repeat these talking points, to scare Americans, to make Americans terrified of nuclear war. I would love to appear on some of these shows, some of these podcasts, like Lex Friedman or Tom Billio or Graham Stephan's The Iced Coffee Hour, but I can't get these guys to respond to me. I don't understand how they can present themselves as equal opportunists wanting to have a lively debate. And at the moment, they're only having right-wing people who support Russia on their podcasts to make these arguments. So it's shifting the debate. I can feel the shift happening with the media here in the United States. And this is the battle cry for cowards in America. Why die for Danzig? And if you don't know much about history, Why Die for Danzig was a pro-appeasement, anti-war French political slogan created on the eve of World War II, coined by Nazi fascist sympathizer Marcel Diat, very handsome-looking guy there. And it's basically, why go to war with Germany over Poland? We told the Germans, if you invade Poland, that's the red line, you're the ones starting a world war. And the Germans did it anyways. The Russians also invaded 3 weeks later, coming from the east. And what the Russians want is their empire back. And in the age of empires, this was over 75 years ago, so I feel like people are forgetting how bad it was. But with the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, whatever Germany called itself, the Russian Empire, the British Empire, it was all about gobbling up your small neighbors. Even though these people have their own distinct history, culture, and language, we're going to invade you because you're smaller, and we're going to make ourselves bigger. Get big before the next world war. And this is what Russia is trying to do. Now, why die for Danzig? This had to do with the Polish corridor in, well, you can look at this map of Europe in 1917, 1918, and Poland doesn't exist. It was divided up between the Germans and the Russians like 30 or 40 years earlier. And the Polish corridor was Poland's access to the Baltic Sea, so they could get things in and out. But this separated Germany. You had Königsberg, this was East Prussia, and then Germany separated by the Polish corridor and Danzig. This drove Hitler insane, the fact that there were two parts of his country not touching each other. So of course, Hitler was always going to invade Poland. And it's literally the exact same situation today with the Suwalki Gap. Let's just go ahead and say that Belarus is not an independent and sovereign nation. It's a subordinate territory to the Russian Federation. But Russia now controls Kaliningrad, which was East Prussia. And Kaliningrad doesn't touch mainland Russia. Of course, like Hitler back in World War II, Putin at some point is going to invade the Baltics, and potentially part of Poland, so that all the territories of Russia touch each other again. This is a problem. Dictators don't like this. And I'm going to make the argument that Ukraine has to be supported today. If the Russian Empire is allowed to reabsorb 40 million people, and there are trillions of dollars of untapped natural resources still underground, then when the West, when NATO, when whoever has to fight the Russians ourselves, well, Russia's going to be a hell of a lot stronger if they can absorb those 40 million people and their trillions of untapped resources. Listen to what the Russians say every day on Kremlin state TV. This is about empire. Putin, a former KGB Soviet officer, has declared the collapse of the Soviet Union to be the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century, and he's trying to undo it. He's trying to undo America's victory in the Cold War and get the Caucasus, get Central Asia, get Eastern Europe, all back under his control. He's not going to do it unless we quit. The only way the Russians can win is if we let them win. And at the moment, Russia is not winning. What can we do? And this is the correct course of action. We need Donald Trump on our side to some degree. NATO Secretary General Rutte meets with Trump down at Mar-a-Lago. If you're a prominent, important person from Europe or the G7, please go visit Donald Trump in the next 55 days and communicate to him how important it is to continue supporting Ukraine. Tell him he looks like he's lost weight. Tell him he's a genius. Tell him he's the best golfer in the world. I don't care. We need Donald Trump on our side to some degree for the next 6 months to a year at least before Russia politically or economically collapses. And I wish I could get more of a megaphone, more of a debate, but here in the United States, it's MAGA on MAGA. The only debates that people are going to listen to and take serious is Republicans versus Republicans, Trump supporters versus Trump supporters. This is now the political debate here in the United States. If you identify as a liberal, Democrat, Harris voter, you have no say. So Republican senator and Trump ally rejects the idea of negotiating with Putin. Who is this man? And this is Republican South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds. And he appeared at a forum, and thankfully, to advocate for continuing military support for Ukraine.
And so now, as I listen to what's happening in Ukraine, and this is my opinion, it's not the opinion of the administration, it's not the opinion of the next administration coming in, but for those folks in Ukraine that are fighting against a Russian aggression that we can all see, I just feel so frustrated that we have not been able to provide them all of the equipment that they need and all of the weapon systems that they need in order to respond to absolute tyranny coming from Russia, a neighbor who has absolutely unjustly invaded their country.
This goes on for 7 minutes. I'll link this down below. I am going to follow Senator Mike Rounds. Thank you so much for supporting democracy and international law and human rights. But in this debate going forward, guys, we're going to have to change our message. We're going to have to change our language. And now is the time to turn on Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan. And we have to say, the United States has not been supporting Ukraine enough. Congress, back in 2022, approved the Lend-Lease Act. It was federal law for a year, and Joe Biden never used it. Joe Biden, 2 years ago, had the power to use the Lend-Lease Act to send Ukraine everything they could have needed to have defeated the Russians resoundingly 2 years ago. And he and Jake Sullivan decided not to do it. So the message now is, Joe Biden is a failure. Joe Biden is weak. Jake Sullivan's a failure. Jake Sullivan is weak. With the Trump administration coming into power, don't they want to look strong? Don't they want to be tough? Don't they want to assert America's place on the world stage and secure our own prosperity and our allies? We can do this by giving Ukraine everything they need to win this war. Here's another clip. This is from Congressman, Republican Mike McCall, and he's been a strong advocate for Ukraine the last 3 years straight. But once again, these are Republicans having to have conversations with Republicans about continuing support.
But I have to say, is the United States posture in the world stronger or weaker if we allow Mr. Putin to invade and take over all of Ukraine? I think it's weaker. We're projecting weakness, not strength. That would invite more aggression from Mr. Putin. It also impacts Chairman Xi and his calculus looking at Taiwan in the Indo-Pacific. Moldova would certainly fall within a day, as would Georgia. And then all of Eastern Europe would be under the threat and the dark cloud of Russian aggression. So therefore, if past is prologue, if we could have stopped Hitler in 1939, my dad wouldn't have had to participate in that war. And I think the goals are similar in this case. And I think when you go to Ukraine, they say, we're fighting for you, so you don't have to fight this war. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. They are fighting this conflict for us, and it's our moral obligation and responsibility to stop aggression where it exists, to defend freedom and democracy against what is becoming now between Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, a very formidable adversary alliance of the unholy alliance that I call.
That's the new language. Do you want to side with our democratic allies, or do you want to side with the unholy alliance of Iran, China, North Korea, and Russia? And you're just not going to find a more pro-American country in the world than Ukraine right now. Abandoning military aid and support for Ukraine will be worse than Biden's disastrous pullout of Afghanistan. Once again, our language is going to have to change because we need to get MAGA on our side. Here's a tweet from Representative Mike Waltz. He's going to be Trump's new national security advisor. He says a strong NATO that restores deterrence and peace requires all member nations to do their part, commensurate with their economic strength. He's alluding to the NATO guideline that all countries spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. Well, here's the breakdown. Every country in the NATO alliance is meeting that 2% this year, except Croatia, Portugal, Italy, Canada, Belgium, Luxembourg, Slovenia, and Spain. So let's go ahead and create a new rule. We'll call it the Trump Doctrine. If you're a country in NATO not spending 2% of your GDP on defense, and you're attacked, then the United States will not help you. We'll call it the Trump Doctrine. I'll support it myself. But look at this. Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, all of the countries on Russia's border that Russia might attack someday are meeting the guidelines. Therefore, the United States should come to their defense because they're adhering to the Trump Doctrine. It's getting stupid, guys, but I just have to bring back the polling. When you poll Republicans and Democrats in the Russia-Ukraine war, how would you describe your sympathies? 58% of Republicans say their sympathies are with Ukraine. They don't believe the Russian propaganda points about Nazis in Kyiv, biolabs, and NATO aggression. Only 4% of Republicans are that stupid. But there is a legitimate debate. Should the United States be isolationist, or should we be spending tax dollars to militarily support Ukraine? And we've got the Democrats. We don't have to worry about them. We just need to get votes from the Republican members in Congress and for Donald Trump to sign the bill. We're working on it. Hey, it's our fundraiser. Let's do an update. So we're on day 5 of the fundraiser, and currently we're at $747,000 in donations. Thank you so much, everyone. I've been talking about this all week. I'll link the launch video down below in case you missed it. But I want to share with you another Ukrainian units that will be receiving either a truck or some drones from our fundraiser.
We are a reconnaissance platoon crew of the artillery division of 3rd Separate Assault Brigade. We fight in Kharkiv region. The enemy is pushing us desperately, but we push back quite successfully. Without your help, that would be very difficult. These small reconnaissance drones are crucial for us. They help guide our artillery strikes, they protect us, they protect our amazing infantry. They go into most dangerous places and do this part of work for us. We're asking our friends at NAFO, at Help 99, for 8 Mavic Night Vision, 8 Mavic Daylight drones. But any help, any quantity of drones would mean a lot to us. Your help does make a difference between life and death. Slava Ukraini! Героям слава!
All right, let's get the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade some drones. Now, I'll put the link down below. If you want to donate, you can click on this button. And I would love it, guys, if you could just kick in 5, 10, or 20 bucks. To do this, go to the bottom to custom amounts. You can then leave me a comment or, let me know how you guys are doing. If you're financially secure enough to give a larger amount to go for a patch, this is what the patches are going to look like. Obviously, at the top here, this is the digital pictures. But what does the stitching actually look like? And here's the version that will be on the trucks. It's just going to be a truck that says Broe with some Christmas presents. And there's the patch with my face on. You have the option. You can either go for one or the other. Or if you want to be crazy, you can order both of them. But I actually think this one turned out pretty decent. I used an AI generator to create this Christmas picture of me, but it's cool. I think people are going to like it. Concerning the donations, we're currently at about 8,000 people who have donated. If you're one of them, I thank you so much. I do every day go to the bottom and I check these comments. A lot of people leaving comments in memory of lost friends and loved ones. Here's Roman with a 26-pound donation. In memory of Ivan, a proud Ukrainian who survived Hitler and Stalin's oppression, Slava Ukraini. Here's from Avis Severskis, $114. In memory of all fallen Ukrainian heroes, Russia will not win this war. Ukraine will prevail. These are dark times, but I still think Russia's going to be defeated, guys. Ukraine's going to win this war. We just all have to do a little bit more to get there. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.